This has been an extremely challenging year for our educators and our kids, and we know that some parents, because of the pandemic and being remote and being in person and back and forth, they have opted to take their kids out of the public school system. So enrollment is declining. But what does that look like and what does that mean? We want to go ahead and bring in Carolyn Claerhout. She's the manager of the District of Pupil Services. Great to have you with us. How are you today, Carolyn?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you tell us exactly, Oakland Schools, what do you guys do for the various districts? What is your mission?
So Oakland Schools is the regional educational service agency for Oakland County. It serves both the traditional local school districts and the charter schools that are in our county. So we serve just under 200,000 kids. And we provide everything from regional services and special ed, monitoring and compliance, to some other regional services, even including business and technology type services. My department, which is Pupil Services, we handle the pupil audits, the 2 count days, which are critical, and also truancy, school attendance issues, and we also support efforts in school safety. So those are kind of our arms of Oakland Schools.
I will say, in all my years of reporting, I didn't know that your agency existed. Are you located back there behind where the Summit Place Mall was?
Correct. Yes, we used to be at 2100 North Telegraph. That is now a county building, and we are across the street.
I like the color that you're painting it, by the way. It's sprucing it up. It's looking much better over there.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I mean, the history of ISDs, and I explain it to people who haven't heard of ISDs, intermediate school districts, or regional educational service agencies, is that they really are the kind of like county government is to our local communities, city, villages, and townships. So we work with the State Board of Ed and the State Department of Ed, as well as all the local school districts, just like the county works with the state and its local school districts, but we are completely autonomous, kind of like the county. But we do have some millages that we support, which is also the special ed and voc ed millages. So our 4 tech centers in our county are supported with taxpayer money, and they are run by Oakland Schools. So that's probably the item that most are familiar with when you talk about Oakland Schools is the 4 tech centers.
So with that too, Carolyn, can we talk a little bit about the decline? How do you even go about tracking it in the middle of a year when it's been a pandemic and it's been hard to track some of the kids?
Right. So going back to last year, because I think you're really talking about last year. So our 2021 school year, we had known last summer because the pandemic we closed schools around March 13th in year 2020. So we knew over the summer that we were going to have some challenges with regard to school attendance and what it was going to look like in school enrollment. So we were working pretty hard during that summer. In my department, for example, we were doing things like you can't take the school year off, that we have a lot of options in our county, including the traditional local school districts, the charter schools, but also the private schools and homeschooling. So we were just trying to get the message out that there's lots of ways to educate, but we do have a compulsory school attendance law. So every child between the ages of 6 to 18 is supposed to be in school. And last year, the 2021 school year, we did have more than we expected drop in student enrollment. You have to know we are a state that we do have declining student enrollment, and our Department of Ed had warned us that they say on average we lose about 13,000 kids a year statewide. And so we were expecting a loss, but we weren't expecting the over 6,000 kids we lost. However, I know every school district put their boots on the ground and were contacting families. We were contacting families on behalf of school districts. And we really discovered kind of three patterns. First, and the most important one was probably our kindergarten enrollment. It dropped the most. And kindergarten families, and I can't really blame them. They said, with this idea that it's going to be virtual or hybrid, or we just don't know, we think we're just going to take this year off. Kindergarten is not a mandatory age. We do not require 5-year-olds to go to school. So there was no kindergarten mandate to go to school.
See, I didn't know that. So you can start your kid in first grade?
We wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
And in fact, we're hoping they're getting even some more early. We know the benefits of early childhood education. That's another strength of Oakland Schools. We promote a lot of those Head Start, Great Start, GSRP programs across our county. No, we wouldn't recommend it, but we discovered that that's what a lot of families did. And that probably made up probably a third of our student loss was just the postponement of kindergarten. So honestly, the question for me this year, and I don't have the answer, is are these families going to enroll these kids in kindergarten, or are they going to enroll them in first grade? Because now they'll be 6. So, and I'm sure every district is taking a look at that. And we're probably going to have a increase in enrollment in either kindergarten or in first grade, depending on where that parent decides their kid is ready for. The other thing we know, so our first branch is kind of that kindergarten. The second branch is private schools. I don't know if you read that recent article in the Sunday Oakland Press, July 11th, but they did some research because I had shared with that reporter that I had no way of determining how our private schools were doing. I don't get their numbers. I don't know what their grade level enrollment was, and we had a significant increase in our county of private school enrollment based on that article, and that made up another couple thousand kids. So if 2,000 kids were for kindergarten and 2,000 kids were in the private schools, we are really now down to about 2,000 kids we didn't know what happened to. But we also know there were parents who homeschooled, who had decided, we're going to just take this on ourselves. It's already challenging enough trying to work from home and keeping kids caught up at home. So we're going to do it ourselves. We also had families who enrolled in the cyber schools. And in fact, our cyber school enrollment, which is the 100% online schools, their enrollment exploded this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it exploded this year because they'd been around for years, more than 10 or 20. And so there were families who said, we're not sure we want to do this. We're in school, we're not in school, we might be, we might not. So we had an increased enrollment in even those. So I always chuckled when they said children were missing, because we know parents knew where the children were. Didn't like that phrase, missing children. But we did have, every school district was reaching out to families just to make sure they were enrolled somewhere. That was our expectation and our hope, was that you were at least trying to find out what the families were doing. And we have to admit, we have to be honest, this pandemic caused a lot of challenges and hardship for all of us. So there were some families who said, it's just too tough this year. It's just not going to work for us. And in those families, we really just tried to promote, reading and math type skills, just to keep that child as much up to grade level as we could. So we're really hoping we're going to see a rebound this year in all kinds of school enrollment. We do expect the public schools enrollment will increase from last year's levels. That's the hope and the expectation.
Yeah, because you wonder if for some of the parents that had decided to homeschool, if they realize how much of a chore it is, because we do know too, kids will listen differently if it is a teacher than maybe they would their parent or a loved one that was trying to homeschool them. Carolyn Claerhout with us here on the MegaCast. She's with Oakland Schools, the manager of District Pupil Services. And what do you think is going to be the long-term impact of the pandemic?
Well, that's really going to be a big question. I know that our schools are preparing a lot for the mental health and trauma supports that our students need, because it's going to be very hard to learn until we can get past the social emotional issues. So I think there's lots of families who are looking forward to returning back to school. I do think homeschooling is challenging, but there are families who do a great job at it. But it's challenging and it takes a lot of time. So I am hoping we're going to rebound relatively quickly. I am not an educator, so I don't know all the strategies they have in place, but I know they've been working on it for the whole year about how we can, I don't want to say catch up people, but just restore people to where they should have been hopefully by the end of this year. And I think over time we're going to see how that comes out. I can't predict. I'm hoping it's not going to be as bad as the worst predictors say. I'm hoping it's going to be a solid rebound
And with
for
that,
most families.
yeah, and with that, Carolyn, if I can ask, how hard has it been for you and your team? Because, even the count day, which has been happening forever, you couldn't even rely on that this year. I forget what was finally decided, if they did do it, if they didn't do it, and remote and...
We had a count day, but we had lots of different things qualify for attendance. We called last year pandemic learning, and the state and the legislature gave us lots of options on how you could actually count a student in attendance. So that was a great relief for last year. We don't have all those options for next year. So our next school year, the 21-22 school year, will be going back to quantifying attendance based on how it was in the past. So we'll have, attendance in every class on count day. And for those who are in virtual and cyber programs, we'll have, again, attendance in every class, which means you're doing some assignments, or the weekly interactive idea that we had, and we've always had, but used much more frequently last year. So, and it has been challenging in the truancy and the pupil accounting, but frankly, we've been focusing on what we call family engagement, just trying to check in with families, make sure their kid is getting some sort of schooling last year. That's really what our primary focus was. And it will be our primary focus even next year, is reaching out to our community partners and others to re-engage our families and our students into school.
Carolyn, do they still have the truant officers?
Yeah, we have school attendance officers.
That sounds so much better.
I know. Most think it's punitive. Honestly, how we work in our county is what we call the 3 A's: attendance plus attachment equals achievement. We're really trying to encourage that child to attend school, find a reason for that child to stay in school, because we know if we can get them to attend, they will achieve. So we tap into school resources, community resources. In fact, we have a countywide protocol and a countywide truancy task force that's been in place since 2005. And we've really been just working on what we call chronic absenteeism and trying to reduce those chronic absenteeism levels.
Carolyn Claerhout with us here on the MegaCast. She's the manager of District Pupil Services for Oakland Schools. Carolyn, just another minute here with you. Anything that I didn't ask that you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I think you covered everything. I just hope that our listeners will get their kids in school, any kind of school, we're hoping just to have a very successful school year next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We don't have a surge with the Delta variant, and we can get the kids back in the classrooms. And I know the teachers would love that as well. It's so hard for them to teach and be remote and in person. So fingers crossed, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we so appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.
No problem. Thank you.